Hey, have you ever thought about having a podcast of your very own? If so, great news. Spotify has a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere and even earn money. It's all in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works. So, Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer. So, no matter what your setup is like, you can get started creating as soon as today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify, and everywhere else podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify, so that's pretty cool. And with Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. And best of all, it's totally free with no catch. Ever since I discovered Spotify for Podcasters, I really just feel like it's taken my podcasting to a whole nother level. So I highly recommend you give it a try if a podcast is something that you've been thinking about as well. Just download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started. Hey there, I'm Julie, and this is the Married to Addiction podcast. If you're here, then you're probably what I call my secret sister. We're in a situation we never asked to be in and fighting a battle we never wanted to fight. We're faith-filled women who are married to an alcoholic, and it affects every inch of our lives. If that sounds like you, then this is a safe place for you to land. Married to Addiction is a faith-based podcast where I help you find the tools and strength you need to navigate your husband's addiction without losing yourself in the process. So please subscribe and tune in as often as you can, because your husband's recovery is important, but so is yours. Hello, and welcome to episode 61 of the Married to Addiction podcast. This episode marks the beginning of the 4th season. So every season contains 20 episodes. We are on 61. So we're beginning the 4th season. Very exciting. Thank you so much for continuing to listen, for joining me here, for tuning in every time a new episode is released. I just really appreciate you being here. It is a blessing for me to be able to bring you this podcast and these episodes. Today's episode is titled A Life Manual for the Wife of an Alcoholic. Who doesn't need that? I know I sure wish I had had a life manual back when my husband was deep in addiction. Oh my gosh. So this episode is going to be a little bit different. In the last episode, we talked about how sometimes faith isn't enough. And I know that sounds kind of weird to just hear that statement as a standalone statement, but if you didn't listen to that episode, go back and listen to that, because we talked about how sometimes when we pray for help with things, God provides that help, and not by just a miraculous, divine intervention, but he'll bring us something that is meant to be used to help us, that we can use to get help in our situation. Sometimes I think that a lot of times we pass on those things because we either don't recognize that, that's what it is, or we don't understand it really. We don't really understand what it is, or we don't really think it's for us, or whatever the case. I actually hear this sometimes when women join my Secret Sister Circle membership. A lot of them will come in and they'll post for the first time and they'll say, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I needed. Why did I wait so long to join? And so on a couple of occasions, I've asked, why did you wait so long to join? And the answer is often because they weren't really sure exactly what it was. They weren't really sure exactly if it was for them, those types of things. So in this episode, as we begin our 4th season, I want to, as they say, pull back the curtain. And I'm going to tell you exactly what's inside of the Secret Sister Circle, because it really is designed to be your life manual as a wife of an alcoholic. We talk about how to handle all of the everyday challenges that you deal with as the wife of an alcoholic. And I really want to make sure that you understand what's in there, because it really can serve as just a step-by-step, day-to-day. You're having this problem, do this. You're having this problem, do this. So it was created back in July of last year. So now there's over a year's worth of content in there that you get access to when you join. However, it is not set up to overwhelm you. Just the opposite, in fact. When you first come in, there's this path that I introduce you to. It's called the renewal path. And it basically shows you here's where you're at, here's where you're going. And there's different steps along the way. So when you first come in, you assess where you currently are on that path. And based on that assessment, you go to the lessons that pertain to that particular stage. So you don't go in and have to start doing all the things. I make sure that it's real clear that you only need to focus on this right now, just these things in order. Do one a day, do one a week, like however you can. Make sure you're doing enough to move forward, but there's no timeline, there's no schedule. It's not meant to add more stress and pressure to your life. It's meant to do the opposite, to relieve the pressure, to help you find peace, all of those things. So, what I wanted to do as we begin this new season, so that you don't have any confusion or so that you're not unclear around this, if you are one of those people, and apparently there's a lot of you out there who have considered joining the Secret Sister Circle for a long time, but just are still kind of like, I don't know, like what really is it? I don't get it. We're going to talk about everything that's in there. So I'm going to list for you all of the lessons that are in there so you can, see how many of these things would really pertain to your situation. I release 2 new lessons every single month. So, every month you have new guidance on a new subject. They are grouped into, as I said, different stages. So we work through different stages of renewal in your life. So the first stage is renewal of mind. All of these are biblical, by the way. All of this is based on the Bible because that's my jam. And that's where I think we really can get our power and, our roots need to be in that, especially through this journey. But anyway, first stage is based on renewal of mind, then renewal of relationships, renewal of spirit, renewal of self, and finally it's wholeness. So once you have gone through all of those stages and you are to your final goal, you will be whole in all of those areas. So these are in no particular order as I read them to you today. But I just kind of wanted to give you an idea. Actually, they are kind of in an order of how they were released, but these are not in order of like what stage they pertain to, et cetera. But I just want to give you an idea of like what all is in there. Like what can you get help with in this membership? So when you first come in, the core content is what you first watch and listen to. Oh, by the way, I have videos for all the lessons, and there's also audio for all the lessons. So if you're not a video person and you don't want to have to sit there and watch a video, pop in your earbuds. It's in a podcast style format, just like you're listening to this podcast right here. It comes up in your podcast player. All of the lessons are there for you to be able to go in and listen to those in an audio format. So for you audio people, which I'm assuming you are because you're listening to a podcast right now, you will love that feature. So when you first come in, the core content lessons are the first things that you listen to, and you go through kind of like a little self-assessment and all of that. But these are, again, in no certain order, but these are some of the core content lessons and the monthly lessons as well. So we talk about common pitfalls. What are the things that trip us up as the wife of an alcoholic? That's one. How can you change those things once you've identified them? How can you fix that? If you are falling into this common pitfall that is not good for you and that is, hurting you in some way, damaging you in some way, not good for you in some way, how do you change it? That's another lesson. Taking thoughts captive. Raise your hand if you're surprised that is a lesson in here. You know how important that has been to me in my life. And so, yes, I teach it. One of the very first lessons. Super, super important. Boundaries. Oh, we love that word, don't we? We know we need them so much. A lot of times we have no idea how to set them, or we try to set them and they're not effective because they weren't good boundaries. They weren't healthy boundaries. They weren't really boundaries that were even formulated correctly. So, of course, we talk about that. We also do have a number of lessons on your spiritual journey because, as I said, that's very important. So there's a lesson on quiet time. How do you put together a realistic time to spend with God every day so that you can deepen your relationship with him, hear from him, all of those things? How do you do that? What do? Maybe you've tried to sit down for a quiet time before and you're like, okay, so do I just open my Bible randomly and start reading? What do I do? That lesson helps you formulate that plan that makes it realistic for your life. There's another, a study. Actually, there's a few different studies in here called How to Deepen Your Relationship with God. That's another one. There is a lesson on self-care for wives of alcoholics, and we've touched on that a little bit here on the podcast. I did do an episode about that. This lesson dives deeper into that and helps you go through and formulate kind of your self-care plan. All of these lessons do have worksheets / exercises / some sort of activity that you do at the end of the lesson that helps you implement it, because knowing is one thing, but doing is everything. I love that phrase too. So it shows you, now that you know, how do you do? And the worksheets and the exercises are meant to help you actually figure out how to implement these things into your specific situation, into a way that's realistic for your life. There is a lesson on communication with our alcoholic spouse. How many times have you tried to talk to your drunk husband and it just ends up being a knockdown drag out that gets you nowhere? What are the best ways to communicate with your husband? How should you? When should you? What should you? All of those things is in that lesson. There's a lesson on understanding alcoholism. I'm sure that you have heard me talk about that before. That is so important. It changed everything for me. I am passionate about helping other wives understand alcoholism and what is actually happening on our husband's side, because most of us do not get it. We think we do. We think we understand. You don't. And it's really important that you do get that better understanding of what exactly is happening on his side of things. There's a lesson on understanding codependency. Again, big buzzword, something that is very important that we absolutely need to make sure that we are learning about and knowing about, but very misunderstood. I completely misunderstood that when my husband was deep in addiction. So that's another one. There was one released last year around this time called Surviving the Holidays with an Addicted Spouse. This can be a tough time of year, right? You've got family gatherings. Alcohol, a lot of times, is just a part of a lot of holiday parties. And, it's football season this time of year, which can lead to more drinking first in some situations. It can just really be a challenging time of year. So there's a whole lesson devoted to just that. How do you survive the holidays? There's one on how to deal with toxic behavior when your husband is doing crazy things and, affecting other people in the household, and you included. What do you do? There is a study called Activating Trust in God. So how do you let go and let God? It sounds real simple, a simple statement, right? But it's way easier said than done in a situation like this. So how do you actually do that? There's also a lesson on how to hear from God. Feeling like you need direction right now? I bet you are. I most certainly did back then. I was so confused and I did not know which way to go. And I did not know what God was telling me to do. And I didn't know how to even tap into that. So there's a whole lesson on that as well. Come January, you will have access to, well, you have it right away, but I released a lesson last January called The Best New Year's Resolutions for the Wife of an Alcoholic. So again, this is something that's timely for this time of year. What should we resolve to do as a wife of an alcoholic? Not usually the things that you would normally think of. Spoiler alert there. There is a lesson on making big decisions. Stay or leave. Do we stay or do we leave? That can help you with that. There is also a lesson called Stay or Leave that specifically does deal with making that specific big decision. Navigating your physical relationship with your husband. This is one that's really important because we have a very different relationship with our addicted person than if it was like your child, your parent, your brother, your sister, whoever that was, because we do have that physical component. So what do we do with that? How do we manage that? That's a really important one. And there's a whole lesson on that in there too. What to do with anger, bitterness, and resentment. Those sure can take up residence in our heart, can't they, when we're going through this? But those also do not serve you well at all. Those are not things that are from God. Those are from the enemy. And those can really take you down and keep you stuck for a long time. So we talk about how to get around those things. Crafting a recovery plan. This is something that was very vital when my husband was considering treatment. We talk about let me just tell you one thing about this lesson. It is not putting together a recovery plan for your husband and going to him and saying, here you go. Here's where you go to get treatment. And I've called and they've reserved a spot for you and you go on Monday. This is not that. but we do talk about how to craft a recovery plan behind the scenes, not something we present him with, but just to kind of have a few things, an idea about a few things, just in case the opportunity presents itself. Very, very different from saying, here it is, go get help. It's not that, but it can be very helpful. It was very helpful in my husband's situation. How to handle relapse. We have an entire lesson on that. Very, very important, especially if you have somebody, if your husband has gone to treatment before and has relapsed, or if he has recently gone to treatment and just came home, or if he, has thought about going to treatment and you feel like he may be getting close to that point. How do you, A, support him when he comes back from treatment, which is very different, looks very different than you might think it does. And B, what are the best ways to deal with it if he does actually end up relapsing? There is a lesson on finding joy through deep roots. This was the talk that I gave when I spoke at a retreat last spring. It is about how to, the whole premise of having joy despite your circumstances. That seems real nice and everything, but when we're in this situation, it also seems quite impossible. We talk about how you can actually find joy in spite of your circumstances, including this one, through growing deep roots. So that one is a powerful lesson. There is one called Managing the Roller Coaster of Emotions, which a lot of women go back to over and over again in the Secret Sister Circle because they find it really helpful. One day is a good day, one day is a bad day. Sometimes 1 hour is a good hour, 1 hour is a bad hour. We are up and down, going through all kinds of emotions when we're on this roller coaster ride with an addicted husband. And that lesson and the accompanying worksheet addresses that. Understanding co-occurring disorders. That is another one that I wanted to include because it was very important for my husband in particular. He was diagnosed bipolar when he went to treatment, and getting help for the bipolar in addition to getting help for the addiction was really a game changer for him. So we talk about understanding and identifying co-occurring disorders. I also did a lesson with my husband. It was called Questions for a Sober Husband, and he did the lesson with me. He came on video with me. I took questions from the women in the Secret Sister Circle. What do you want to know? What do you want to know from a husband who is already in recovery? And he answered them, and they really found it very, very enlightening, the things that he had to say. There's a lesson called What to Do When You Are Spent, and that was an acronym SPENT. When you feel like you are at the end of your rope and you have nothing left, I give you 5 things that each start with one of those letters, SPENT, 5 things to focus on when you are just completely out of gas. There is a lesson called How to Find Rest as the Wife of an Alcoholic. Doesn't that sound like a paradox? It probably seems to you like there is no rest. There is no rest. You cannot find rest. You haven't had rest, and it is not available to you, but that is not true. You can find rest as the wife of an alcoholic, and the tips for doing that are in that lesson. There's a lesson called How to Set Things Up to Protect Yourself. We talk about how to financially protect yourself, how to legally protect yourself. And I am not a financial advisor or lawyer, and I'm very, very clear about that in that lesson. But I can tell you the things that I know from experience would have been a really good idea in my case. I can tell you the things that I know from experience with other people's situations, the things that I recommend. And I do, of course, encourage you to speak with a professional in all of those areas because they are the ones that really know, the ins and outs of all of this. But I just give you some jumping off points of things to think about and maybe who to go to talk to about that kind of stuff. There is an entire lesson on kids and addiction with tons of resources for you. How do you help them? What do you do? What do you do when there's kids in the house? I give you so many things in there, resources you can use that have helped my own son, things I've put him in, great programs, etc. A lot of it is free. So that lesson is in there for you as well. Almost done here. There's just a few more. There's a lot in this membership. That's why I wanted to make sure you know what all you're getting when you join. And again, these are not all to be done at once. This is a journey, right? This is a journey. You start at step 1, you do those lessons, you get good at implementing those things, then you move on. It's a journey, and you have support along the way in the group with the other ladies that are there. I'm in there all the time answering questions, all of the things. So don't let this overwhelm you. This is not something that you go in and you listen to all of these things right away, not even close to that. It's something that's a journey. It's a path. The next lesson is how to deal with lying and deceit. That one was one that the members were really excited about. Raise your hand if you deal with lying and deceit from your alcoholic husband. I guarantee you every single one of you has your hand raised right now, and it's a tough one. So we talk about that. What do you do? There is a lesson called ruined plans and disappointment. How many times have you been invited to a party or out, for a double date or to a family event or to a wedding, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and either just didn't go even though you really desperately wanted to because you were afraid that your husband would end up getting drunk and acting a fool, or you went and he did end up getting drunk and acting a fool? How do you even manage in those situations? Does that just mean you're not ever supposed to have fun again? You're just not ever supposed to go to anything ever again? No, that's not what it means. And that's what that lesson helps you with. Guidance around all of that. There is a lesson called understanding your part in this. What do we do? So I tell you a lot of things that you shouldn't do, right? A lot of things you shouldn't do in this situation. What do you do? What is your part in this? We talk about that in that lesson. And then the last two are the ones that were just released this month in the month of November. The first was called React or Reset. It's what to do in those moments where you are ready to rumble. When something has set you off, when something has triggered you, when something was said, when something was done, and you are just ready to go from 0 to 60, what is really the best thing to do in that moment? Should you never react? Should you sometimes react? How should you react? What should you do? It's all in that lesson. And then the last one that I recently released is called What is God Doing? What is God doing? Have you thought about that lately? Has that phrase run through your mind at all during this journey? It's how to gain clarity and stay in trust when it seems like God is silent, when it seems like he's not moving, when you're just frustrated because of it. So those are all the lessons that are available to you in the Secret Sister Circle membership. Again, you do not do them all at once. It is a journey. It is a process. It takes time. But I take your hand and I guide you through that journey step by step. You're learning every step of the way. You're starting to implement and you're seeing real, true change in your life. Plus, you have a brand new group of sisters, friends, a community that is doing this alongside with you. And let me tell you, those women are some of the most beautiful, encouraging, inspiring women that I have ever come across in my entire life. So all that being said, we would love to have you join us. And if this is resonating with you, all you have to do is go to my website, marriedtoaddiction.com, click on the Get Help dropdown. You will see the Secret Sister Circle button right there. Click on that. You'll see a lot more about the membership. I really gave you all the details today, but it has, all the what's included. What does it come with? There's some bonuses, like all of the things. So go check that out. If you feel led, I want you to just pray about it. Pray about it. And if you feel like God's tugging on your heart and saying, this is for you, click that button to join us. Because sometimes, as I said before, instead of just delivering us miraculously from our circumstance, he brings us something else that can really help and really get us past some of these difficult things that we're dealing with right now. So again, we'd love to have you. I hope that this really gave you a much better idea of what goes on in there. And I hope that if you're one of those people who have kind of been on the fence because you weren't really sure what it's about, now you really feel sure. We'd love to see you inside. Thank you so much for listening. I will see you next time. Quick question for you before I let you go today. Have you been to the Married to Addiction website? If you haven't, I would love if you would go pay it a visit. It's just marriedtoaddiction.com. And over there, you can see just a lot of different information about my podcast. There is a blog on there. There's some free resources for you. And there's also a few ways that you can actually get some help if you need a little more help and direction and support as you travel this difficult path with your addicted husband. So if you haven't yet, please go visit marriedtoaddiction.com. Thanks so much.